I want to make sure that you all realize that we were able to get one of the best speakers on leadership around. He's an expert on leadership. He travels all around the world providing leadership seminars. And without any further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Naphtali Hoff to come speak to you.
Leadership is not narrowly defined. It's an expansive concept. And the more of us that think as leaders, the more of us that act as leaders, the more of us that understand that we can be a difference maker for ourselves and for those around us, the better our environment's going to be. A media person walks up to a seasoned CEO and he says to him, "John, you know, you've been really successful. How'd you do it?" He says 2 words, "Good decisions." He says, "That's great, John. Well, how do you make good decisions?" 1 word, experience. And then he says, "Well, how do you get experience?" 2 words, bad decisions. We start walking the wrong way with me at the head. Some guy turns to me and he says, "At least you weren't leading the Hebrews in the desert." So it's all great and good to be a leader, but you got to be goal-oriented. We often don't realize that a lot of things that we do invariably indicate an openness or a lack thereof. So if you're sitting in the same room as somebody and they're talking to you and you're sitting and your body is closed off, you're kind of wrapped up in some type of way, or maybe you're a little bit back, you kind of have a stern face or things like that. In many cases, it implies judgment, it implies an unwillingness to listen, it implies being on the defensive. So even though you might have said, "Well, I was super open to what you had to say," but if your body says X and your words say Y, every single time, I think without exception, the other person is going to read your body and not your words. You want to get people out of what's called a fixed mindset and move them more into a growth mindset. And typically the people who succeed the most have a growth mindset because they're not limiting themselves to I can or I can't belief, right? If I say, "Oh, I just don't do this, I'm not good at that," and you sort of hold on to that belief, typically you won't go very far. But if you have a growth mindset, "I'm not good at it yet." What is the vision? And what does an excellent outcome really look like? When we succeed, what will it be? Right? Too often we have this idea, we're going to change, we're going to enhance our capital campaign, we're going to change engagement levels, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But how do we concretize it in a way, with numbers perhaps, or other quantifiers, that are going to allow us to say, this is what it looks like. So even before we're there, everybody knows what that goal is. The story goes that he had an executive, a relatively young guy, who made some really poor decisions, investment-related decisions, and cost the company millions of dollars. Watson calls him into the office. The guy's, as they say in Yiddish, he's on spilkes, which means he's all nervous. And he's worried about what's going to be with me. I'm going to be fired. This is it. And he sits down and he says, "I suppose you invited me into your office to let me go." And Watson says, "No, young man. I just wanted to let you know that we very happily invested a few $1,000,000 in educating you." And he sees 3 workers, bricklayers all, working on the road. And he approaches the first man, we'll call him Mr. A, and he says, "Mr. A, what are you doing?" He said, "I am laying bricks." He proceeds another 20 yards, and he sees Mr. B. He says, "Sir, what are you doing?" He says, "I am building a wall." Finally, 20 yards further, he approaches Mr. C, and he says, "Sir, what are you doing this morning?" And Mr. C says, "I am building a cathedral."